Great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Service Learning 101. I would like to start things off with an introduction of our team for today that's going to be with us for this session. I'm Lori Fowler, and I manage service learning for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And I am joining us today from Annapolis, Maryland. And we're just going to go in order of the names on the bottom. Michael?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Bell. I'm the Service Learning Program Coordinator for Queen Anne's County Public Schools, in addition to being supervisor over visual and performing arts, world languages, and school library media.
Morning, everyone. I'm Scott Gansky. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships at Youth Service America.
And I'm Albert Lewis. I'm a faculty member at University of Maryland College Park Extension 4-H educator.
McLean?
Hi, my name is McLean Meston, and I'm an 11th grader at Crofton High School, and I'm also part of the service team at ACPS.
The Akode brothers? Do you want to introduce yourselves? See if I can.
My name is Kaze Adeko Ola. I'm part of the Baltimore City 4-H Youth STEAM Ambassador Program.
And where do you go to school?
Waverly Elementary School.
Okay. And your brother's name is?
The Baltimore City 4-H Youth STEAM Ambassador Program, and I go to the city Wesley Middle School.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And thank you to the team. We have worked hard to hopefully prepare a wonderful session for you today. We've got some questions we're going to answer, give you a time to ask some questions of us, and then we will go into breakout rooms, share some things that are going on in our respective areas with service learning, and then we'll come back together for a quick closing. Before we get started, we're going to have a quick opener. If you could, in the chat, just type in on a normal Saturday when you're not having the pleasure of joining this fantastic summit, what do you enjoy doing? So just put in your favorite thing to do on a Saturday. Lots of sleeping and reading. I love it. Oh, art. I see some sports in there. You learn so much from people on what they do with their time off. Family is definitely a good one. Super. Next one. Where are you joining us from today? So are you, what city or what county are you in? Kind of get an idea of where we're all coming from. If you want to go ahead and put in your role in that, you can as well, what you do in your area. Some of us are coming as students, some of us are coming as administrators or coordinators. Got some people from out of state, which is great. Pennsylvania's here. Oh, Montgomery County, nice to see you guys here. A couple people, Baltimore. All right, and the last one, just to get an idea of what you already know, what is your definition of service learning? So what do you think service learning is? How would you explain it to somebody? Student activity. Civic engagement. Love the words that you see in these are really powerful. Yeah, definitely getting a benefit on both sides. Meaningful service, showing up. Definitely a connection to civics. Love that passion. I agree with you, Jessica, on that. The passion that we can find in ourselves and others for service. It's so nice to be able to try different things and find out something that you like. Okay, so let's dive on in unless anyone else has any other things they want to share. We are going to start our questions today with, how do students in Maryland earn their required service learning hours? So we do have some people from around Maryland and some from outside of Maryland. So Maryland is the only state that requires service learning in order for our students to graduate. It actually was effective starting with the class of 1997. They decided through some research and going abroad that it was something that they wanted to incorporate into our Maryland state schools. And so it was decided that students had to have 75 hours of service that included preparation, action, and reflection. It was to start at the middle grades, and it has, if they had something outside of that, it had to be a locally designed program, but it had to be approved by the state superintendent of schools. We're going to just highlight a couple different plans. Michael is from Queen Anne's, I'm from Anne Arundel, so we're going to talk about those. But then we also have a couple others to show you, just to see how the different approaches are in the various counties throughout Maryland. So in Anne Arundel, our students do have 75 hours of service learning. We incorporate all of our hours into the school day, starting in 5th grade. Our students in elementary school get 5 hours. In middle school, they get 10 hours in each grade. They work as a team and develop projects along with their teachers, and so that would be 30 hours for those 3 grades. And then in high school, we've worked it into our government, science, health, and English 11. So that's how our students in Anne Arundel get them. They do not have to go outside of their school day in order to get the hours. Everything happens within school. Michael, you want to share a little bit about Queen Anne's and how your students get their hours?
Absolutely, Lori. Thank you. We're a little different in terms of Queen Anne's County Public Schools is a locally designed project-based program. So in 4th and 5th grade, students combine for a total of 15 hours and 1 project that they build. And middle schools, there's 3 total projects, 15 hours each, where they get many different experiences, also built into their school day and within their classes in science, social studies, English language arts. And so they will enter high school with an additional 45 hours there, coming in at 60 hours and 4 project completions if they complete it all from elementary through middle. Once they enter high school, they can complete an additional 15 minimum hours through at least 1 project in their science, social studies, ELA, and visual arts classes. And today I'll be sharing some of those amazing experiences in the arts so you can see what happens really outside the box in that arena as well.
Thank you, Michael. Montgomery County, I think we do have some Montgomery County folks with us here today, but they also have their own designed plan. Their students start in 6th grade. They get some of them in school. So you can see they have 45 hours that are infused into their coursework, or that means that it happens during their school day. And then they have to have 30 additional hours. Many of the opportunities that they can find are on a website. Students can go through and they have locally approved partners that they can work with. But if they choose something else, that has to be approved through their service learning coordinators at each of the schools. Right, and one other one is Washington County Public Schools. Students earn 15 hours in each of 4 grades, and then they have 15 hours through an independent project. Any student design project has to be approved by the school-based coordinators. So there definitely is a lot of keeping up with the fidelity of service learning as far as the approval process and making sure that it does meet the 7 basic practices of standard service learning and contains the steps that are required. Anybody have any questions on the different plans or anything that you wanted to add? If you're from Washington or Montgomery, anything to add about those plans? Okay. I just think it's really interesting when all of us as local service learning coordinators meet together. We always have a very good time talking about what's happening in our counties and figuring out, how we can get some best practices happening through working with others. All right, let's go to question number 2. What trends are we seeing for authentic service learning experiences? Scott, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Great, thanks so much, everyone. So yeah, at the national level, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of different school districts across the country who are requiring service learning and service experiences for students. And some of the observations that we've made at the national level is that there's, students are still chasing hours to try to be able to graduate. So you'll often see, to try to reach that requirement of 50 or 75 in Maryland, students will, at the very end, it'll be a lot of stress and anxiety of trying to reach those hours to be able to graduate. So the examples that we showed before, Michael showing how they're breaking it down grade level to grade level, and giving students an opportunity to get credit for the service learning experience, definitely makes it a lot easier, a lot more authentic and genuine, for the students to be part of that authentic experience. The other thing that we're seeing is really that quality over quantity. So I just did a panel with the National Association of Secondary School Principals, and we invited college admissions from across the country. And what they were saying is, rather than sporadic hours where students are just, trying to do a whole bunch of different action items, that was already pre-set up for them, they like to see students who are going through a process of beginning, middle, and end, where they're actually identifying an issue in the community, working collaboratively with their peers and identifying solutions and really, presenting to a public audience. And those are the types of things they're looking for, which is exactly what service learning is and why we're here talking about it. So that's always the great thing to be able to do. The Service 2.0 is just thinking about, the schools that are taking basic things like maybe a food drive and then adding in reflection or adding in little components, just getting your feet wet into just making that service a little bit more meaningful. There's also that peer-to-peer influence. We always have those student leaders who are always the first to raise their hand and the first to jump up and say, I want to do this. Challenging those students to think about how they can influence their peers is always a great thing. And then redefining what's counted as hours. So getting credit for investigation and preparation and planning, making sure that students are getting credit for that. And then the other thing we found is that virtual service, even though for internet can be an issue, but we actually found students were getting really creative, and teachers and finding ways to, as we're doing today, use Zoom and other technology to make a difference. Some of the other, on the next slide here, some of the information that you'll see is from our friends at Points of Light, is that really, the Gen Z is really the most civically minded generation today. So if you'll see on some of this slide here, Gen Z, they're more likely to sign petitions, more likely to participate in volunteer activities, really just overall getting involved. And you're really seeing that on the news every day, where students are really just very passionate about an issue, joining together. You'll see more students are joining a rally or really getting fired up about a cause. And that's something for us to get excited about, because they are waking up in the morning and they are passionate about those issues. So in the next slide, we talk about some of the issues that the youth are the most passionate about. Right now, especially when in a pandemic, mental health really is one of those issues that has really skyrocketed to the top. When YSA Youth Service America has done some of our research in the past, mental health wasn't in the top 4, and it really just jumped straight to the top. Poverty and environment have always really been in the top 4, and we're seeing race relations and racism also really jumping up as an issue that students are really passionate about. So it's important to look at these because those are the types of conversations that you can have with students when planning a service learning experience. And then if you look at the next slide, what are students looking for in a volunteer or a service learning experience? They're looking for something that's discoverable, something that's local, also social, and something that's authentic. And I think that's the key word that we're trying to go here, which is what service learning is. It's an authentic experience. We actually get to see what you're doing, right? You're actually looking what the problem is, you're investigating it, you're researching it, you're trying to see exactly what other people, other partner organizations are doing, and you're really collaborating with your peers. Students want to see impact. So talking about the data, what is the impact that you're making in the community? And that's something that often as facilitators, we forget to do, but it's so crucial and so important. And also something that's personal, that allows students to be able to engage with the beneficiaries. And then the next slide here. This is just something we always like from listening and talking to different partners and school districts across the country. This is kind of, you want to think of yourself in a service learning experience as like a co-pilot, right? And this is the project checklist that we always seem to go over with educators, is really to make sure that every project has youth voice, making sure that students are really at the center of the planning and the action and the demonstration. Making sure that it's meaningful service so that students actually understand the impact that they're making, as we talked about earlier. Bringing in community partners, not just as someone to speak to students, but someone that they can sit around and ask questions about and really, bring out that inquiry-based learning that's so important. Focusing on skill building, whether that's college and career readiness skills, and then always building in reflection, not just at the end of a project, but also the beginning, the middle, and the end. So these are things that we always try to remind ourselves, and after talking to a lot of educators, these are the things that we really put together here.
Thanks so much, Scott. Does anyone have questions for Scott about any of the things that he had as far as the trends? I just love that data. As a former math teacher, it definitely is a powerful thing to see how impactful our youth have been through that. The checklist, I think, is fantastic as far as making sure that we are having authentic ones. Yes, Reynolds from Montgomery County.
Are you calling me?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes, I love the data and the suggestions, Scott, and I put a chat in. One of the issues that we have is we are in Montgomery County, as was explained, the SSL hours are earned through a combination of in-class and out of class. And so we at the League of Women Voters have been trying to put together the out of class kinds of experiences. And what we're finding is difficulty of access. It's hard to reach the students to tell them this is what we want to do. And it's hard to reach the teachers to tell them this is what we think we can do with your teachers, would you help? And it's been, I would say, it's been an obstacle. What we ended up doing is going to the Montgomery County Volunteer Center website and posting our projects there. But then we find that we end up with students who want the hours. That's all they want. They want a one-off opportunity, and the hours are it. And I think that it could be, I would love to find a way to make it more meaningful and follow all of the things that Scott was listing. I think that what we do end up giving is a meaningful service. It's not just going to the library and planting flowers, but understanding democracy, understanding your community, and so on. So I would love to have suggestions on how we can do that, bigger projects, longer term, and not just one-off opportunities.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that you could do in that case, Donna Clefman is a really great leader for Montgomery County MCPS. So I can send you in the private chat her email address, and she would probably be the best person to talk to, because they do have a great team of service learning coordinators and people who are leading that. And what you could do is have that conversation with her, to really brainstorm what is the best on-ramp, what is the way to make sure that students are really engaging in those meaningful experiences. But it sounds like you really are, by posting it, by partnering with the Volunteer Center, which is an amazing organization here in Montgomery County. I think you're really doing the right things. It's probably just bringing the right group together for that more meaningful conversation, and making sure that you're bringing the leadership at MCPS on board as well. Any Lori and Michael, did you have any suggestions as well?
I think your suggestion to reach out to the coordinators, I think Donna and over there would probably be the best. Sometimes what they can do is put you in contact with someone at a school who has a group of students who is very interested in that, and then that can work as far as finding someone that matches what your goals are as well. Because you're right, sometimes when the kids are looking at the things, they are just trying to figure out how can I get these hours taken care of. And it sounds like you're looking for a specific group of students that will be very passionate about what they're doing with your organization. Is that right?
Right, thank you. And I don't want to leave the impression that all of the students are just in there for hours. Some of them actually continue and they want to repeat. And we have one student who is doing observing of county council meetings who loved it so much that after she went off to college, she's doing it remotely for us.
Yeah.
I would like to add to that too, another idea, something that's worked well for us in Queen Anne's County. It's when you do provide some meaningful service, like you spoke about, it's the way that it's promoted so that the kids actually see it and recognize the fact that, oh, this might be not only a community need, but one that gets some press, gets some recognition. I right away partnered with our communications specialist, had a great source that I've become very friendly with in our local newspaper, who will put out all of the great stories that I'll put together for them based on what these students are doing. So I think the communication of what you're doing, not just to the teachers and into the schools, but put it out there. And if you put it out there, and you'll see that in a few slides coming up on what we've been doing in the arts, it'll catch on with students as well.
That's a great idea. Thank you. We actually have been trying to put some things on Instagram because we understand that's what the teens use.
It definitely is. Definitely is. Any other questions?
It's not exactly a question, but I think that, Ms. Reynolds, what you're talking about is exactly what this entire convening is about, is trying to raise the caliber, the experience, both for the student and for the community partner, by deepening the partnerships between the servers and the servees, or the K-12 entities and the community partners. And it has to be reciprocity based. It really has to meet both sides. And the vision that you have is really what will be better for the students as well. They just might not know it yet. So thank you for raising that so much. And I would suggest in terms of access, because what we also hear so much about is access, and for first generation or immigrant, or often, frankly, students of color or people from low income backgrounds, transportation and time becomes an issue. So I would have a tendency to go first to the schools that are within the closest geographic circle and build out relationships and really help them understand the opportunities for internships and for college access that can come through a deep and meaningful experience such as you're primed to offer. It's fantastic. Really good topic to raise.
Thanks so much for adding that, Ms. Gates. Okay, let's go ahead to question number 3. What are some ways our students and other organizations create service learning experiences? And McClee, I'm going to let you go ahead and open this one.
Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is McClee Mesfin, and like I said before, I'm an 8th grader at Crofton High School in Crofton, Maryland, and I'm also part of the Student Service Learning Leadership Team at AACPS, which is also where I know Ms. Fowler. So we are basically, our team is a group of students in AACPS, and we're basically just passionate about service and want to develop service-wide initiatives in our county as well. So we have meetings 2 to 3 times per month to create service projects, support students through like the service portal. And basically the portals, like it has numerous service opportunities for high school students. And then we also plan general sessions. So that's been a big part of what we do. And they're about like a 2-hour countywide service sessions where any middle or high school student in ACPS can learn more about service, hear from local service organizations, and also learn more about the service opportunities that are available. And we also research and apply to grants, which I'll talk more about in a second. And we work with high school service liaisons to support service learning. And we also run the Anne Arundel County Service Instagram account. So that's where we also highlight outstanding service-oriented students in AACPS. And we also attend service conferences and talk with local community partners and organizations as well. Let's go next slide. All right, so here's just some pictures of like service initiatives that we've done. So our most recent one was Project Healthcare Heroes, which is on the bottom left, and where we collected and made 100 packages for healthcare workers around our area. So we collected hand lotions, cards, artwork, and many more things. That was a very fun thing that we did recently. And during the height of the COVID pandemic as well, from like November to December of 2020, we also organized a clothing drive in our county where we collected over 800 winter clothing items to be donated to local service organizations. So we have 3 committees. So it's communications where we like use it Instagram and tell people about it. We have a project-based committee where we figure out the logistics for the project, dates when we do it, how to get the items for clothing drives and other initiatives that we're doing. And we also have a portal committee, which is where we post local service opportunities and help the portal be more accessible. And also some other things that we've done, if you go back to the last slide, we've also done meetups at different local organizations. We made happy bags where we won a grant to make 50 goodie bags for the Ronald McDonald House in Baltimore. Then we also won grants to clean up parks in our area, made paracord bracelets, and also participate in other things like Passport to Serve, which is from Chick-fil-A. So we have a grant writing team, which I'm a part of, and from that we won a couple of grants for our projects. So one was from Karma for Kara Foundation, and we used that to fund our Happy Bags project or Goodie Bags project. We also won the Kindness Grows Here grant, which is like a local organization in Crofton where I live. And then we also won the WE grant as well for our Burnside Park cleanup project. And we also attended service learning conferences. So our recent one was actually this week, but last year I participated in it, and that was also a fun way just to learn more about service and how it connected to our team as well. So basically this team was a very fun way for us to meet new service students in our area, create meaningful projects, and share our passion for service for the whole county and beyond to other places as well.
Thank you so much, McLeod. If you can't tell, it's a real pleasure to get to work with students like McLeod, doing great things for our community every day. Great. Go ahead and Mr. Bell, go ahead and take it off with the Queen Anne's County initiatives.
Absolutely. So much like Dr. Shapiro kind of opened this conference with, what we did in Queen Anne's County when I came in 2018 is we created a bridge where there wasn't one. And it started up with a partnership with Haven Ministries and Krista Pettit. And they initially came to us through Rick Stripmater and our local Queen Anne's County Arts Council with this idea to help homeless that were transitioning into homes for the very first time by getting donations of artwork. So what initially happened, though, they were finding is people were giving them discarded artwork that they didn't want anymore. And this wasn't really fulfilling the mission. So this is where we partnered up. I met with Queen Anne's County High School's art department chair, Stephanie Zeiler, And we created a partnership that was very different. And so those students in her National Art Honor Society ended up creating art just for them. So it wasn't some discarded work, it was something new being put into the world just for them. And that made it all the more special and all the more meaningful. And this blossomed into an annual project. The second slide here that you see, Paddles for Hope, this was their expansion on the Art for Your Home project, where students painted hopeful images on oars that were donated by Haven Ministries. And half of the oars also supported a fundraiser, not only for Haven Ministries, but it fulfilled a local need, again, providing art for homeless transitioning into homes for the very first time as part of that Art for Your Home initiative. On the next slide, Courageous Marks. So this came out of a collaboration actually with other county arts teachers at a workshop led by MSTE, focusing on arts integration and using the arts to help raise awareness for mental health, which is something that Scott Gansky mentioned also earlier, has been coming to the foreground after COVID. Now, the project originally started at the high school level, where students from Queen Anne's County High, they came up with inspiring and uplifting words that they created into ceramic tiles. They put a QR code on the back of them, and it all linked to a website that contained information complete with local and national resources, just to help people that were struggling with mental health while receiving a positive message about the project. Tiles, as you can see from some of the images there, they're placed around the community for people to actually find, which was so cool. People posted on social media and conversations started, and they even did some PD with the staff. So Wreaths for Your Hope. This year, the National Art Honor Society took that same Art for Your Home project and it morphed into Wreaths of Hope, where the students put on a mini workshop for the public, and we even had a board member attend. It was amazing, where they made 22 wreaths and tabletop decoration arrangements that were donated to the Haven Ministries during the holiday season. And they're already planning their next year's service learning project with Krista Pettit and Phil Stapleton as a liaison with that community. And I tell you, they've found it to be so impressive because it's all about inspiring hope. And this last slide, so we also, in Queen Anne's County, I mean, we're near the bay, so we often do a lot of projects that are dealing with the watershed and other inspiring things dealing with science, social studies. This was honoring our Veterans Day, where we get our band and our chorus involved as well. So this is something where Queen Anne's County, not only we touch on the arts, but we also hit the sciences and the social studies, and a lot of those projects are infused in those courses, but then they extend beyond the classroom walls and often beyond the classroom hours.
Thank you so much for sharing, Michael. Such amazing creative things that are happening in Queen Anne's. I love all the arts integration that's happening with your service learning. All right, moving on to Baltimore City 4-H. Albert, would you like to share a little bit about your 4-H ongoings in Baltimore City?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Albert Lewis. I'm an educator. Can you go back to the previous slide? Oh, thank you. My name is Albert Lewis. I'm a 4-H educator from Baltimore City. I'm going to talk about, I have two of my young men with me from our Baltimore City 4-H Youth STEAM Ambassador Program. Our program, it's designed to engage our youth in civic in the community, whether that's city council members. We also integrate with Lieutenant Governor. Also, it's for them to have some service learning and community service experience, and also develop leadership. And I know most ambassador programs start with teens. I wanted to start with younger people. A couple of reasons to get their sparks, the opportunity for them to really be engaged in their community, and they tend to be very interested and very excited about doing almost anything. But also to follow them long term, see those long term developments, and that's one of the things that 4-H does. Is again have our youth involved in the community, but also to try to help them thrive and see that long-term growth that the youth have. The next slide, please. And as you see here, this is our 4-H pledge, and it highlights the 4 H's, which is head, heart, hands, and health. And for that head aspect, we try to help our youth obtain academic and eventually vocational success. For their heart, to have them, care about their community, care about, their fellow, fellow persons, and whether it's a club member or their neighbors, to have that loving spirit, be able to help other people. Their hands, again, to be involved in community. And also the fact that learn skills for employability, whether it's robotics, whether it's engineering, and then their health, again, to take care of themselves, have that, be happy, no matter what situation they may be in, to focus on mental health, social health, and then also environmental and community health as well. So that's how we apply the 4 H's. Next slide. And again, one of the things that 4-H does, we have a thriving model, which our 4-H programs are sort of the base for our thriving model. And through our students, their interests, those sparks, whether it's robotics, whether that's horsemanship, whatever it may be, we try to find a way for our kids to be interested in the activity. Use that as a base, and then to, again, nourish those interests, to nourish those activities they have, and help them to thrive more. And then again, like I said before, following those long-term developmental growth, such as academic achievement, as you see here, social competence, again, high personal standards, once back to that heart and that those hands, contribution to others, again, that community service and civic engagement piece, connection with others. Again, the youth team ambassador, no matter how young they are, we start from age of 5, which are Clovers and 4-H. But again, no matter what small activity they can do, like again, we did a cleanup activity as part of the mayor's fall cleanup this past fall. And actually this weekend is actually the mayor's spring cleanup. But again, having them, whether they're 5 or whether they're 8 or 13, have them involved. We did a robotics demonstration at a local library, which I am now. Our young people, they were handing out stickers, handing out goodie bags. The younger people, with the older young youth, they were actually helping, coaching other youth to learn how to code in robotics. This slide shows, because of our community service activity and now involving the community, the Maryland STEM Festival invited our youth to Annapolis to help advocate for STEM education. As you see in this picture, the Lieutenant Governor was there, so our youth gave a demonstration to the Lieutenant Governor and Maryland legislators to help, again, promote STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And again, we was also supported by the Director of Housing in Baltimore City. The last, see the bottom picture there, that's the director who actually paid for our bus to go to Annapolis, but also really support our youth. And our young people have gone on, again, in this slide, these youth are in elementary school, but they're now, most of them in middle school. They've gone on to be involved in student government in middle school. One of the youth created her own business where she also donated proceeds from her business to local art schools. We have youth involved in the Center for Talented Youth with Hopkins, the Ingenuity Project. So they've gone on, again, only in middle school right now. They're still involved, and hopefully through high school and hopefully college and throughout their lives, they'll be involved in community service, civic engagement, making a difference in that community. So, okay, and I'll stop right there. So,
okay. Hear quickly from the students who were involved. So I'm going to ask the first question of our students. What did you do for your community service activity?
We cleaned up trash.
Excellent. Okay, and why did you do it?
Because we wanted to make the world a better place, so the earth would fall sick and we have dirty pollution in the air.
Excellent reason. Thank you so much for doing that for the environment. How did you feel about participating in that activity?
I felt excited and really good about myself because we got to clean up the community so the earth won't fall sick.
Good. Yeah, and excited and good about yourself. It's very empowering. That's wonderful. What did you learn about your community?
I learned that when you work with important people, like you get to meet more important people and change the law to give science money.
That's wonderful. It definitely, working with other people definitely opens up opportunities. Did you enjoy?
I'm sorry. I just want to mention that Corey, besides cleaning community, Corey also, he was involved in Maryland Science Earth Day project, where he also did a slime experiment. He also was involved in the robotics demonstration as well. So he's been involved in a couple of more things than his brother has, but still these young men, I think Corey Day is 10 and I think Akola Day is 8. They're starting already to be involved in that community, being civic engagement. They also got to meet with their city council person, Odette Ramos of the 14th District of Baltimore City. She also came out for a community cleanup as well. So through our Earth Day experiment, she was really excited about that. So she actually reached out to me to meet our young people. She wanted to meet them and engage them and ask for their help to, help change our community. So again, these young people are starting early, and hopefully as they continue in their, as they continue their academic and their vocational experiences, they'll become more involved and more passionate about it. We talked about passion earlier, how to get meaningful service learning experiences with our young people. For me, starting them out early, having them understand how the impact they have in their community, and hopefully in seeing that long-term effects of it, I think will be a benefit as well. So.
Yeah, I thank you, Albert, very much for that. I agree that starting them early is so important. I mean, hearing the students in elementary school being able to speak about changing laws is very, very inspiring. So thanks for all you're doing, students, and Albert. Definitely ways to get involved. And we're going to go through the last one at a relatively quick pace, but the slide deck will be shared. We do have some service learning resources for teachers. Scott, I'm going to let you open that up real quickly just with some YSA resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have some resources that are available for free on our website, ysa.org/resources. One of those is our Semester of Service Toolkit, which is super popular, really breaks down that whole process of investigation, preparation and planning, action, reflection, and demonstration. It's also available in Microsoft Word if you want to just, create your own and do whatever you want with it. And there's also a 45-minute course that you can take, and there's a Maryland version of that we can follow up with you and send that talks specifically about Maryland. We also have some grant opportunities. One is an after-school grant that's due on May 20th for service that takes place after school, and then there's a lead agency grant. We have tons of grants, and just to kind of piggyback on what Albert was talking about, our grants are for children as young as 5 years old. So we definitely also agree that you start young, and that's the way to go there for sure. And then if you want to sign up for our youth service briefing, we share tons of resources and grant opportunities, not just from YSA, but from organizations across the country that you're eligible for. And it just comes out every Thursday. And so you can kind of see that every Thursday evening with all those great opportunities. So if you scroll to the bottom of ysa.org, you'll see those.
Okay, and then some others, again, these will be shared. The marylandpublicschools.org site, if you type in service learning, it will bring you up to the service learning page, and it has ready to go project ideas, best practices, references, and things that you can implement right away. We.org also has many ways that you can get engaged. They have trauma-informed practices, social and emotional learning is kind of additional, but they also have a whole component of service learning with ready to go action plans. McLeod referenced our service learning portal. We do have a portal in Anne Arundel County where the students can find opportunities and log hours, which is fantastic. I can share more about that if you are interested in learning. And we are going to hopefully have at least a couple minutes for our breakout room. Thank you to everyone who presented. Thank you for people who gave questions. We do have some questions that are going to be posted from our facilitators here in our session that we are going to share in our breakout rooms, and just have some time to really get together and discuss and have a voice for our counties. So I'm going to turn it over to whoever is putting us into breakout rooms. Thank you so much.
That would be me. We're going to post.
Thanks, Joseph.
Oh, of course. We're going to post questions in this chat, and then we're also going to jump into each room and post the questions in those chats as well.
Fantastic.
One final reminder is to be aware of the space you take in the conversations and make sure there's space for everyone. Thanks all.
And Joseph, will we come back here at the end?
Oh yes, we'll be closing the rooms at 11:20 for our little wrap up before we head back to the main Zoom.
All right, thank
All
you.
right, thanks everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone still see the discussion questions in the chat?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Fun. All right, so we can start with the first question. So the first question is talking about what resonated with you or really stuck out as important from our roundtable discussion that we just left.
I would say that just engaging the young people in making a difference in that community, no matter how small or large that may be.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think you mentioned this, Albert, the idea of finding something that students are passionate about and really helping them explore that through student service learning and helping them find what program or what community service they really connect with and promoting that passion.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things that popped out for me. The first was, but the partnership with Waverly and Councilwoman Ramos, I thought was interesting. That I just think that those hyper local elected officials are often kind of hubs for information. So and obviously not every city council person is as good as Councilwoman Ramos, who's kind of like a force of nature. But
she is. But even before her, her predecessor also sponsored our activity, came out and supported our youth. Yep. So I don't know, maybe this I'm not sure it's the 14th district or not, but our city council in Baltimore City, I think, are pretty active. They're pretty active. So if you engage with them, I think they tend to be responsive, I think. So.
Yeah. So I think they're good. And then I also thought it was really interesting how the different counties started to chunk out the hours over the life cycle of being in the schools. And I thought that, it seems like just the matchmaking process is really labor intensive, but really important, that like finding that, different students at different ages come from different places. And it's really sort of matching, it's like job, like a job market or not, but like, it's really about finding the right fit. And so training are, really working with the educators in the schools to help be able to identify those fits, I think is important. So I don't know how we set up that kind of navigation support, but that feels kind of underinvested in, I guess. And the service learning coordinators are doing their best, but it's hard.
I think it helps, the service learning help empower the youth to make a difference in the community, no matter how small or large. I know a coordinator at a Cola Days mom have them do like little bags that they give to the homeless too. So when they're driving around, whatever they're doing throughout the day, if they see someone, the mom says she has little bags that she has them give to people, who may be in need or whatever. So again, little small things, and having that, just starting off small, having that mindset, hey, I can make a difference in my community, no matter how small or large. And if you see it, like I know when I walk outside my community, I know someone mentioned they live in Waverly as well. We live in the same area, but when I see dirt on the street or trash on the street, I just, it may be in the evening or in the morning, I pick it up. I take my little trash picker up and just, and it makes a difference. People drive by, say thank you, whatever. But little small things like that, just being a part of your community. Like today we have a farmer's market across the street. I'm looking at it now. Again, having that community is a great opportunity for our community to come together. And we see each other, we greet each other. It's great. Just that community, getting back to that community mindset. So.
I think one thing that really resonated with me was how, like with the STEAM, using what they're learning to then make a difference in the community, that it's a partnership of what the kids are learning and what they're able to, how they're able to use that in their community, that those aren't separate skills. We're not learning about robotics separate from, well, how is that going to affect our future? How will that affect the environment?
Yeah. And I think one thing in the 4-H program, we often speak about taking community service projects and elevating them into service learning projects. And I was glad to hear some discussion about that, because a couple of the elements that help make that elevation in the experience is that research. Both community service and service learning fill a void or a need in the community, but service learning goes into that research ahead of time, digging into the problem, digging into the solutions, building those community connections, but then also that reflection piece. And I think that, the 4-H program, we're trying to move our groups to that service learning and those components. It was encouraging to hear them talk about even recognizing in the school system with regards to the hours that youth get credit for that research and that reflection piece, because that's a critical component of it.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on, unless someone else has something that they want to say, we kind of touched on the second discussion question, which is what do we think is working well in our separate counties or just in Maryland in general? Does anyone else have a specific idea or example that they think really stood out to them of something that is working well?
I'll say some of the student poll worker efforts, and I know Montgomery County, you can get service learning hours for being a poll worker on election day, and it's a big chunk of hours because it's like 8 to or it's 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it's a long day, and you also get trained. And yeah, that's we have a panel on that later, but I'm excited to see if we could do that in some other counties. It also serves a real need too to get enough poll workers.
And I also think that, just reflecting on my own experience as a student at MCPS, some of my most memorable learning experiences have come from student service learning opportunities. So like outdoor ed, for example, I think everyone in MCPS knows about outdoor ed and how much fun it is. And that was a perfect example of student service learning being fun and also being effective to build community service.
I have one.
Go ahead.
So what I think about the community service and how it's helping people is that people that can't afford to go to like private schools, they get to go to like a fun public school where there's like students who help each other and care about each other, and they learn and get to go to college and stuff.
I think that's a great point. It definitely makes it more fun. I would agree. All right, question number 3. So the follow-up to the second question, what are some challenges or barriers that we've seen with student service learning in our state?
I think good and bad, like requiring it is a good thing, but requiring is also a bad thing, because again, someone mentioned before about the meaningfulness of and wanting to do it. I think someone asked the question about how to get them really engaged. I guess we have to require them in order for them to be exposed, but then they're just doing it just to get, okay, I got my hours, I'm done, kind of thing. So I guess it depends on the person, depends on how they internalize it, whatever. So, or maybe how it's presented to them, if you present it in a fun way, I don't know. So all those things, so it's good and bad, so.
It's interesting. I feel like the use of hours as like the metric is kind of like, I don't know if there's another requirement that we could put on it, or just like that seems baked into the law in like a really profound way that like kind of limits how creative you can be. I like what you were saying, we were saying earlier about like baking the learning and strategizing into a service. Cause like when I think about how, like, I don't know, like I think about like my community association, we meet, every month and we talk about what we'll do as a community association, and like, or like the social action committee at my synagogue, for example, like there's a lot of, for every hour we spend like actually doing something in the neighborhood, there's like an hour or 3 of like deciding like, well, what do we want to see in our neighborhood? And so I just wonder how we can, I like the idea of looking at all of that as community service. So I don't know how folks are doing that in the individual schools.
Yeah, And again, another thing that we spend a lot of time with on our programs and program is you know, the do, reflect, and apply. And so I think that that's the important component to bring meaning to this and to help continuation is not just the doing of the activity, but taking that opportunity to reflect on why that was important to those that were served and to those who were doing the service. And then, you know, how do you apply what you learned from that experience to future experiences?
That's one thing that Chris, that we do as a youth team ambassadors, and just all my 4-H programs, we tend to reflect. And again, you'll be amazed at what kids get out of it. They can really see the impact they're making, no matter how simple or small, you know. And I love getting their perspective of, why'd you do this? Why'd you coach, you know, other youth in terms of coding or robotics? And they can understand, wow, you know, to help them learn, you know, that science is fun or whatever it may be. You know, they really get to see that, you know, so they understand.
I think one other thing is also kind of the educating the parents on the why. I know a lot of times when I was in the schools, I would have parents email me on behalf of their high school kids about service hours. And it's like, no, your student, your child needs to email me. Like, part of the learning process is learning to explain, you know, what are you hoping to get out of this, instead of your mom emailing and saying, my son needs 28 hours. What can you do for him? So I think that's the other piece, is making sure the parents are on board.
And I think the one thing I would want to add, just from a student perspective, obviously I'm not a student anymore, but when I was a student, at least the structure of how it was set up in my county is that by the time you got to 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, the structured built-in SSL opportunities kind of fell away. And so a lot of the times people in those later grades kind of forgot about student learning. And then they would get a month before graduation and kind of start panicking and try to do some easier SSL opportunities instead of trying to really cultivate things that they're interested in. And I think that's more of a structural issue than a content issue, but I think that is something that we might want to start thinking about, is how can we make sure we're following through with our students even up to the very last day that they're in high school, and not just kind of doing sporadic activities with them. All right, next question, let's see. What are some resources you use? So I'm assuming if you are a student, what resources do you use to find and engage in student learning? And if you are a educator or leader, how do you find those opportunities to give to your students?
For me, just being engaged in the community, again, talking with the library, and also asking the youth. I mean, we're actually starting with the youth. I usually talk to the youth, what do you want to do? Do you want to do anything? You know, we make a list of all the things they may want to do, and we pick and choose which may be easier, which we can do in our community. So they have some great ideas too. Some things are wild, we cannot do, or it's like to be sort of may take a little more complicated to do, but other things are simple. Like I was really amazed when they wanted to coach other youth in terms of coding and robotics. I was like, wow, that's a great idea. So we was partnered with the local library, which was in walking distance from the school. We walked there, and then the libraries, they really loved it. They kept inviting us back over the past week. We think we started in 2016, I think. And we've been doing it ever since COVID. We took a break. Just when we did the outside activity, but then again, we may start again next year. So, but they love sharing their learning. The library loved having us. The community loved having us. So it's been great. So.
I think in setting those goals after those brainstorming sessions, like Albert is talking about, is that oftentimes we apply the SMART goals acronym to the project as well, because we do want to make sure that we have a project that, you know, has a measurable result, one that's achievable, one that has a time frame. It's really easy in these brainstorming sessions to really reach for the sky, and that's really good unless there's not an opportunity to bring and actually complete that project. So we actually want to see that project bring completion, and you know, that is something that helps you know, facilitate moving on to a more engaging project, a deeper project, and more involved projects. So if you start something with too high of goals, it could actually be discouraging if you don't achieve that.
Yeah, I'll just echo that from a community partner perspective. So, I've helped with this coalition, Baltimore Votes, which we do a lot of scoping volunteer opportunities around elections. And I think one of the hardest things is sort of figuring out, like, there's just different levels people are coming in at. So there's a whole group of people who just want to show up somewhere on election day and do something. And like scoping things for them is one slice of things. And there's another set of people who are willing to show up on election day and lead people, but not willing to do any like prep or thinking about it. So that's like a second tier. And then sort of a third group where, they are willing to sort of think about it beforehand, plan a campaign in their community, et cetera, and making sure that you're getting the right, like matching, communicating effectively with the various volunteers so that they know what they're getting into is. So I think I'm trying to think about how to scope that for you. We haven't really done a youth component in the past, but we could be much more, like we should be doing more with city schools to do that. So, but I think that the scoping of the opportunities is really hard from the community partner side. And so, so some more support in that scoping, I think, would be helpful.
I think something that teachers can do is kind of have a backlog or a group of student service opportunities that they can call to when they have students in their classroom who they see are passionate about that subject. So for example, I teach NSL, which is a government class. And I always try to have maybe 1 or 2 opportunities where I can tell students who I can see are passionate about government and passionate about civics and say, hey, I see that you're passionate about this topic. Here are a few opportunities that you can use to both get your SSL hours done and also explore more of this topic that you are clearly passionate about. And I think that's a really great way to kind of explore and cultivate that passion in the students for their SSL opportunities. All right, sorry guys. Okay, final question. Our final question is, based on this experience and this conversation, what are some things that we can do to help build on our ideas and build on our goals to better service learning and experiences and civic learning opportunities around the state? So what is the next step in this conversation?
I mean, maybe just wrapping our heads around what's happening around the state with this issue. Like, it feels like there's, especially, I know the funding for a lot of the positions in the districts has been cut quite a bit. So yeah, maybe there's something to do around just like wrapping our heads around as a coalition, like how do all 24 counties do this? Organizing it into a couple of groups so that it's sort of more like easy to understand across the state.
And I think too, gatherings and opportunities like today, just to share examples, best practices on ways that we can maximize these opportunities, both for the community and for those young people and adults that are a part of it as well. And so continuing to share these best practices in venues like this is good. And also, just like Albert did, bringing along the youth members of this experience so that we can hear from their voices what they're getting out of this experience and where they want to take this experience the next time around.
I was just about to say the same thing, Chris. Inviting the youth, but also trying to make it fun as well. We have a lot of creativity, in our youth and adults as well. Try to, oops, if you're about to leave in like 58 seconds, sorry. So yeah, just brainstorming, trying to make service learning fun. I don't know. like someone mentioned TikTok before, maybe making a TikTok marketing video about, showing their service learning, advertising opportunities, that kind of thing. That'd be a great thing, making it fun for them,
Totally agree. And I think those are the perfect end comments for this breakout room. Thank you all so much for your participation. You all can head back over to the main room where I believe we will have some final wrap-up comments before we head over to the second session of the day. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Great job, guys.
See you guys back in there. Hi, everyone. All right, I'm going to wait for a few more seconds because I think we might have one or two more people joining us and then we can get started. And Ms. Fowler, since you're here, thank you again for being on the panel. You had some really great points.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the invitation to come.
All right, so I think it's just going to be the four of us. That is totally fine. First question that we have is what resonated with you from the roundtable discussion, and that is the discussion we just came from. What did you agree with? What did you disagree with? And did you have any questions about anything that was brought up?
Well, I really liked Samantha's answer to my question, bringing in parents to be judges, bringing in parents to advise students on service learning. I think that's all really great. I like both of those ideas and I think I'll implement them. I will say we work with students grades 3 to 5. So I'm always having questions about how to adapt the vast array of materials available for middle and high schoolers to younger age groups, because there really are not as many resources as I believe there ought to be for younger students. And in candor, that's one of our reasons for being as a group, is we're actually trying to fill that space. So I guess if I were to ask a new question, I would say, maybe at some point in this conversation, we can look at that too. But just to answer your first question, Jessica, yeah, I liked the way the suggestion was made that we connect with families.
And I definitely agree with what you had just said. I think that too often we wait to middle or high school to engage students in these really impactful experiences, when a lot of it could get done at the younger level in elementary. And I think that is definitely something that all stakeholders need to be aware of.
I think also just thinking like strategically as a teacher, it would be much more helpful if students came into the classroom with that background knowledge, like how they would in a math or an English class. But since they don't really have that in elementary schools, especially in middle schools, it seems like you really have to spend a lot of time just teaching them the basic information. And that is information that they are not very interested in. And so that kind of disengages them when that should be really the time when you're trying to reach out and grab them and make sure that they're interested in the content. All right, question number 2. This is so much easier because there's only 4 of us in here. Name an after-school activity or club that you participated in or you're currently participating in that you think is a great way for young people to become engaged in civic life.
Well, something that I didn't mention, but it's in my bio. I currently sponsor the Warm Up America Club at my high school. And what those students do is they actually just knit or crochet 8x8-inch squares that we sew into blankets that we donate to people in need. So yeah, so I don't know if you guys had heard about the shooting that happened at Magruder High School in Maryland this past year. So we were able to donate 3 blankets in the weeks after that as security blankets for students. And so that is something that an after school club that I do, and the students who are in it love it. So just engaging students in as meaningful SSL opportunities. Obviously not every student is going to be interested in knitting or crocheting, but any sort of club that would engage them in connecting them to their community. I've seen our Key Club do stuff like make PB&J sandwiches that get donated. or hold a canned food drive. So there's a lot of different ways to engage all levels of students, I think, in meaningful SSL opportunities that don't necessarily have to even be connected to like an academic subject.
So when I look at my own academic experience, the clubs that I was involved in were chorus and theater. And on a superficial level, you'd say, well, that's not really civic or public life, but it is very civic because you're joining and you're creating community. And of course, theater was something invented by the Greeks, who also invented democracy. And theater was used as a tool to transmit lessons about life and civic behavior. So in that sense, they were very civic. At the Civic Circle, we're piloting what we call a civic club at Weller Road Elementary School for grades 3 to 5. And we're about to start offering some 6-week clubs after school through Excel Beyond the Bell through the Montgomery County Recreation Department. But here's my challenge, and you guys might like to weigh in on this, is when students choose the club as an elective, we are competing with Girls on the Run and STEM and basketball. And I'm sad to say, we've had some attrition for our civic club because we're very earnest and, some of the kids are really into it, but it's, you really need to grab them. Adults love our club, but we need to get kids to love our club. So we use the arts as a means to do that. But to be frank, it's very expensive to bring in teaching artists every single time. So we have guest speakers and we have civic activities, but I'm really looking for ways to juice up the club to being something that little kids really want to stay with. So yeah, that's an interesting challenge.
Hey, this is Bill from Frostburg. I've enjoyed listening, and I come from a higher education background and involvement in, I think the greater challenge that comes for our college students, and because many of them lack the engagement and participation they had in their earlier school years. Although student government and fraternity and sorority life is a great tool, a vehicle that we can channel students in. I think the more that work that's being done early on in secondary school, K through 12, really can set the stage, because it can often be pretty challenging and pulling teeth to get college students engaged, especially early on. Kudos to the work you're doing.
And I think I by no means have the answers, but I think what the common thread and theme that I see throughout all of these successful civic engagement opportunities, whether it's in school or extracurricular, is making it relevant to the students. Having authentic tasks that students can get into, whether it is engaging in analyzing a current event, or a local community problem, or a problem in the state, right? And I think when students actually are able to connect what they're seeing in the world to either what they're learning in school, I think that can really engage them and make them more willing to pursue more civic engagement in the future, because they realize it's tangible and they can actually see themselves making a difference, and they have the tools to do that.
Yeah, the student speaker, Max, he's on Teen Court, and that's actually an organization that I was a part of when I was in high school. And I think exactly what you said, Ms. Fowler, like those kinds of organizations, especially in the world of civics, it's often hard to get students to apply the content we're teaching them to their own lives, because they think, I can't vote. So like, how am I going to make a difference if I can't vote? But organizations like Teen Court, students can join and they can actually tangibly see that they're making a difference, and that they can also see that they're interacting with civics and law and all these other things. And personally, after doing that, it made me fall in love with civics and kind of led me on the path where I am now, because I saw that I could make a difference even if I was a 15-year-old kid in high school. All right, next question, question 3. This is the key question. What do you think it would take to get more young people to become engaged in these activities that we were just talking about? And I think, Eliza, this was exactly what you were mentioning.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you what we're planning for the fall and we'll see if it works. But we want to lean into what Samantha was saying, which is they do have these social justice passions and they want to make the world a better place. And they're very sensitized to the fact that we have a war and we have an environmental problem and we have a pandemic and there are a lot of big problems in our world and they're pretty concerned about them. Oh, not to mention racial equity and social justice. But so what we're going to do is try to sell both the arts activity and the social justice piece. So as an example, we might have a teaching artist come in and do zines with the students, but it's going to be Zines for Change. You know, that's going to be the name of the club, Zines for Change, or Storytelling for Change, or Poetry Slam for Change, or Songwriting for Change. You know, so that's how we're going to sort of market it. And what we want to do is try to combine the arts with whatever's on the students' minds. Now, with the littler kids, they often get into stuff that's a little closer to home, like they're very big on bullying, and they talk a lot about bullying. But that too is civic, because it's about learning to be civil and respect other people. So.
I love that idea. And I think marketing that, I think the parents will see that the tangible academic skill that they kind of want their students to engage in, but then you also have that civic engagement part that you really are trying to emphasize. And I think providing that, and one of the great things about arts integration techniques is because they are also very performance-based, you can engage a whole community with that through, you know, through performance nights or displays, art shows, and stuff like that, that can really, because a lot of what these civic engagement tools, another thing is also just presentational skills, whether it's through writing, speaking, and all that. And unfortunately in schools, I know as teachers, we don't always emphasize that enough because we don't feel that students either like it or are very knowledgeable on how to do it. And so we just tend to avoid it.
Yeah, and I gotta say, that is so key. And it's something that is not always present in school, especially in the bigger public schools. You see it more in the private, smaller institutions, and we need to give our public school students that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to professional development, right? Getting teachers, it's teacher efficacy, having teachers believe that they can lead those discussions, can teach those skills and presentational skills to students, but it's going to take practice, right? It's not something that you develop overnight.
Well, and you're swimming against the students because they're shy, and they don't want to
Yes.
get up.
Yeah. All right, so those were our final comments. Thank you all so much for engaging in this breakout room. We are going to head back over to the main room, and I think we're going to hear some final comments from our presenters over there. So thank you again.